one of my followers on Twitter, and shout out to Kwaku Donker for tagging me in this post. If you don't know what this building is right here, this is one of several buildings that is on the campus of Yale University. Now, why I'm talking about Yale today is because the Department of Justice just hit Yale University with a lawsuit claiming it discriminated against white and Asian applicants for at least 50 years. And guess who they say are at the forefront on the other side of that lawsuit? If you guess black people, you are correct. When I saw this, I said, is the DOJ serious right now? So you mean to tell me for the last 50 years? So let's see, it is 2020. We're going back to 1970. So you telling me since 1970, Yale University has been discriminating against Asian and white students and picking black people over them for the last 50 years. Are you kidding me? That doesn't even sound remotely accurate. If anything, it should be flipped. Like, that does not make any sense whatsoever. And notice they said Asians and whites. They didn't separate them. They didn't say Asians. They didn't just say whites. This is Asians and whites. Let me get into it. The U.S. Department of Justice has sued Yale University for racial discrimination in its admission process, arguing the school deliberately put Asians and white applicants at a disadvantage for decades. Filed in the U.S. District Court in Connecticut on Thursday, the lawsuit accuses Yale of considering race as a factor for admissions for at least 50 years. You want to know what's so crazy? Many schools, especially PWIs such as Yale, and Yale is what you call like one of those prestigious schools, have used quotas forever to get people into their schools, and white people make up most of those percentages as far as admissions because it's a PWI. But when it comes to the quote unquote non-whites, like your like black people, Asians, and every other group, they have to have a certain amount in there in order to keep their accreditation and keep funding coming in. So this whole thing does not make any sense to me at all so far. It says, claiming the school has violated a provision of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which bars recipients of federal funds from engaging in race-based discrimination. Yale's race discrimination includes imposing undue and unlawful penalties on racially disfavored applicants, including in particular most Asian and white applicants, the department said in its complaint, adding that the university has engaged in this race discrimination despite receiving millions of dollars in federal taxpayer funding. The DOJ went on to argue that Yale's admissions process features an oversized, standardless, intentional use of race, which injures some applicants while giving an unfair edge to others. Why don't they just come out and say that they are mad that the black students are getting in? Why don't they just go ahead and say that? Because that's basically who they're talking about. But see, it goes back to that thing. If y'all remember that Weasley looking chick, that redhead, the one who was down in Texas causing all that chaos because she couldn't get into a particular school because she felt she should be able to get in there because of legacy, because her parents went there, but her test scores weren't good enough, and the other kids got in, most of them were black, and she felt some type of way and then tried to claim it was affirmative action, and then got Congress involved. It's the fact that whenever we are good, they always feel that we're taking advantage of something. Meanwhile, you had that whole college admission scandal last year that they completely threw under the rug as of lately. I told you after what happened with Lori Loughlin and her husband, you ain't gonna hear about it no more. That's it. You probably will not hear about it ever again. You won't even know what's gonna happen to Rick Singer, the person who organized the entire thing. But they always think that if black people have an advantage of something, that we somehow got in because of so-called affirmative action, which, by the way, was meant for us. But who benefited from the most? White women. And I don't even think affirmative action was even out back in the 70s. That was something that happened more later on, like maybe I would say the 80s and early 90s, somewhere around that mark. Yale President Peter Salovey has denied the charges, saying in a statement issued on Thursday that the university does not discriminate against applicants of any race or ethnicity. He maintained that its policies are completely fair and lawful and deemed the lawsuit baseless. While the general practice of affirmative action has been upheld in the U.S. Supreme Court, allowing schools and universities to take race into consideration on a limited basis when looking at prospective students. The DOJ says Yale failed to use race in a narrow, time-limited, and targeted manner to achieve specific and defined educational goals, and instead has institutionalized its use of racial preferences as a permanent feature of its admission process and decisions. Well, if you go back 50 years and knock off and shave off a few years, at one time, Yale was only a school that mainly white people went to. Like, you were lucky to even find any other group of people there, but they didn't say it then. Notice they only went back 50 years. I bet you said, let's go back 80 years. They ain't going to go that far back because, that far back, it was mainly only white students there. They are not slick, but they're upset because you have people who look like you and I who can get into these schools, and they feel that we are not qualified. And then they'll throw the race thing in there. But these are coming from the same group of people that swear up and down they don't see color. That's why I said that's the biggest crock of BS that can ever leave their mouth. And a lot of BS leaves their mouths on a daily basis. The suit comes on the heels of a 2-year probe into Yale's application framework, which concluded in August. A review of 10 years of admissions data found that the university had turned away scores of Asian American and white applicants each year based on their race, whom it otherwise would admit. The government gave the Ivy League school 2 weeks to adjust its policies, threatening to sue if it failed to do so. In 2017, the DOJ Civil Rights Division said it would devote resources to investigating action practices in line with that initiative. The department later voiced support for a private lawsuit brought against Harvard over similar claims of discrimination, which it also said did harm to Asian and white applicants. A federal judge ultimately ruled in the school's favor. However, the plaintiffs have since appealed the decision. 45's Justice Department also previously moved to toss out a series of federal guidelines, some implemented under his predecessor, Barack Obama, which encourage school administrators to diversify campuses with race-based affirmative action policies. BS at the end of the day. At the end of the day, that's what it all boils down to. They're just simply grasping for straws. And this also reminds me of a story that I did a couple years ago, where they were saying the landscape of a lot of these Ivy League schools or these PWIs were changing because one year they said that they admitted in their freshman class, the majority of the class were non-white. That's what they're scared of. It has nothing to do with so-called affirmative actions. If the scores are better, they're just better. But see, they feel that we aren't worthy of going to these type of schools, that all we're good for is a trade school or what's the one for the associate's degree? Community college or HBCU. They feel like that's the only highest level of education we can get. We're not good enough to go to a Yale or a Harvard or a Brown or any of these other Ivy League schools, that we're not worthy to go there and excel with the rest of them and probably even surpass. And that's the part that even scares them. It's not only excelling with them, but even excelling beyond them. It's like we have had a glass ceiling put onto us and we're stuck in a glass ceiling as well as a box, and we cannot climb out of it, and they're mad if we can make it out of it. So they want to sue them because, oh, you're not admitting enough white students. Oh, you're not admitting enough Asian students. Well, how about this? Take the quota things off and let the stuff speak for itself. But they ain't going to do that because they still need that funding. So as long as them quotas are there, it is what it is. Y'all let me know what you think.